Welcome to Final Approach with Chris Gregory. I am a philomath who is somebody who loves to learn things. One of the things that I've learned is that everyone has a tale to tell and a lesson to teach. From pilots to farriers to musicians to authors and creators, I'm going to explore my interests while introducing you to some amazing people. Pre-flight is complete and we have clearance, so let's kick the tires and start the fires. Well, friends, let me tell you, I've got a special one this time. If you've ever had an interest in outdoor cooking, you probably went to YouTube, and it would be almost impossible not to come across Cowboy Kent Rollins. Well, I didn't have to watch but one or two of those videos and knew I'd found a kindred spirit. His presence when you're around him is incredible, but it comes across through the camera and onto the screen. Unlike most people, he was way more down to earth, way more humble, and even way more likable, if you can believe that, than he is on YouTube. So anyway, I reached out, and in no time, I was able to secure a chance to interview this great American, and we sat down for about 90 minutes and felt like we had been friends my whole life. So, folks, you are going to really enjoy getting to know Cowboy Kent Rollins, and you'll soon be looking him up on YouTube at kentrollins.com. I know it says that we can kick the tires and start the fires, but this man knows what fire is all about. Thanks for listening. Ladies and gentlemen, I am sitting here with Cowboy Kent Rollins, and if you have ever heard of the interweb, I'm sure you've seen him on YouTube. Almost 3 million followers. What a deal, huh?
Yeah, we are richly blessed, Chris. Thank you so much for having us on. It's a great pleasure. We always say we have the best fans in the world. It's people like you, people that value hard work, know what God and country stands for. You're cut from the same cloth we are, my friend. So it is an honor to be here with you.
Well, thank you very much. I guess you got about 10 years on me. You grew up in the world when it was still the world, huh?
Yeah, we grew up down there on the banks of the Red River, south of Hollis, Oklahoma. Everybody down there was poor. They just didn't nobody know it. You know, my mother always told me, we ain't got much, but we got family. We got love. I was the youngest one of the children, and really I got to stay home with my mother the longest. Me and my dad were best friends. We cowboyed a lot together, but my mother taught me the values of what cooking was all about, what life was about. Old women that would gather on Sundays after church and throw a meal together and never look at a recipe. You know, that was something that really just instilled in my brain. I think, how do they even know what's in it?
And so whenever you cook, all the time, you're like, a little of this, it says a cup, but you kind of put a handful.
I watched them old women for years and years, and I was amazed at what they could put together from scratch. And I know when we got fortunate enough to do our first cookbook, and that came out in 2015, Shannon would go back and look at them recipes, and she'd say, you've got to change this to cups, half cups, or tablespoons. People don't know what a little dab is, or this is just the right amount.
Your old recipes did say pinch and dab.
Yeah, or a handful. You know, that's just what we had been passed down from, you know. And a recipe was always just a guideline. It's something you looked at, but you could change if you thought something needed to be in there or something didn't need to be, you know. And I never seen them old women in my mother's kitchen or wherever we was at go by a recipe. And my mother told me that she said the joy of cooking is cooking for the ones you love. And she says you love what you cook for the ones you love. And it was always a great thing. She'd tell me, she'd say, I just love to watch the expression of people's faces when they eat. Because she said, it is a gift that God has given us to be able to cook, and we're supposed to share it with others. And when you had fire and you had food, you'd draw a crowd, and that's what it's been about.
So now, did you grow up on a ranch?
Yeah, we was a ranch and farm operation down there. We run quite a few cattle, but we neighbored up with a lot of people and helped people out.
Neighboring is what is done out west.
Yeah, and it was a thing that was instilled in us from an early age. You help your neighbor out because they'll help you out. Everybody knew everybody. No money ever exchanged hands. I was taught that the value of friendship was worth more than any coin that was ever made, and that is so true.
You told me your dad was a farrier in the military during World War II.
Yeah. He'd shoot a few horses, before they went, because my dad, he roped. He'd always had worked for different people down there gathering cattle and stuff like that. But they found out that he could shoe horses over there, so he done a lot of that. When he got out of the Army and come home, he said, I finally got to shoe some for money that people was paying me.
Did he have to go overseas?
Yeah, he was in the Philippines for a while and in France after that for a while. I remember he told me, he said, we got on a big boat and was going to go home. And we get out there about 10 miles, and he said, there's typhoons, so we turn around and come back. He said, we did that like 4 or 5 days in a row. He said the boat ride was bad enough, but he said they went all the way to Seattle, Washington, then you get on a train and you go to Vernon, Texas. He said them cots ain't big enough for you to take a nap on, because he was a pretty tall guy. He said I felt every cross tie between Seattle and Vernon, Texas.
Man. Wow. I don't know if you've ever been in an old battleship, but they used to put a cot over every desk, so I can imagine what that was like. My grandfather was a cavalry soldier before World War II, and then when they went overseas, they handed them rifles and boots, and so they didn't get to use horses,
My dad was in for a lot of it, too. He got to spend some time with MacArthur. They got him to driving tanks before it was all over with. And
no kidding.
They was in France one time, and he didn't talk about it a lot, but he said the general told him they was going to have a big meal that night and going to have steak. He said, man, them steaks look pretty when they're sliding them down that table and there's an old bombed-out church. He said, but I got to looking at him. He said, I've been around beef all my life. He said, it wasn't beef. He said, I asked one of these guys, I said, what is this? And he said, horse meat. And he said, I just couldn't eat it.
Oh, no.
He said, it made me think I might be eating my old roping horse. And he said, I just didn't get her done.
Have you ever cooked horse?
No. I had the opportunity once, but I was sort of like him. That was one of the first things that I remember touching in my life, besides my mom and dad, was a horse. And they were near and dear to my heart. And I know there's a lot of people that eat them. I'm going to continue to eat beef and the rest of them things before I get down to the horse.
Do you eat pork or chicken?
Yeah.
So all the rest of it?
Oh, I've cooked everything that crawled through camp or walked through or flew through.
But not calamari?
No, well, I'll take that back. I was doing a festival in Alabama on the Gulf Coast down at Foley. Did it for about 13 years. I'd always tell people who was doing demonstrations, I'd say, somebody bring something tomorrow and I'll cook it. I don't care what it is. And this lady raised her hand. She said, can I bring it? I said, yes, ma'am, you bring her own, sugar. And she brought it up there in a little ice chest the next day, and I pulled it out there, and I said, ma'am, what do you call that? And she said, calamari. I said, I don't cook what I can't spell, ma'am. And I said, looked like a yellow water hose to me. I said, we'll just leave it in there.
So you didn't get it cooked, huh?
No, we did finally end up cooking it for her later that afternoon, but it's an acquired taste.
Did Shannon ever convince you to try some of it raw?
No, she did. When we first got together, she asked me, she said, have you ever eat sushi? And I said, got some at a truck stop north of Reno one time.
Oh, that sounds like it's healthy.
And she said, that's not where you get it. I said, yeah, I found that out later on that night. Sushi has become one of my favorite meals because really there's two things I love about it. I love seafood, something fresh like that, but you ain't got to build no fire to cook it. And we've made a lot of sushi, whether it's something that we put our twist on, that's a cowboy sushi or traditional sushi. I'm not afraid to try new things. There's just some things I think that you're supposed to not eat.
Well, I understand that. I'm a very adventuresome eater, but occasionally if the smell is so rotten, because you get some stuff that very hard to get past your nose. So you grew up, your fifth kid, right?
Yeah.
And did your mom cook on a wood stove or?
No, I can remember having just an old propane stove at one time. 2 burners. She had cooked outside. She knew how. When her and my dad got married, she was not a farm or ranch person. And I remember he always told the story that he went and picked her some mesquite beans one year. Told her, said, here, you need to fix these green beans. And she said, I cook them things all day long.
Still a little hard. Huh?
Yeah. She was a great cook. A meal to us was always had fried potatoes and beans because beans were cheaper than anything else, or black-eyed peas. We had a lot of dried peas back then. My dad told me, he said, we raise beef, we just don't eat a lot of it. We're going to sell it.
Yep.
We'd get something if it's crippled, or you hurt an old calf when you was pulling it or something. It was always one of them deals where it was totally cooked different than really what I cook now. Because nobody back then, you ever heard of anybody eating a medium rare steak. My mother would fry a piece of steak, a piece of sirloin, to where it was past done a long time before.
Do you like it well done still?
No, I like it rare. Most of the time, especially if it's something we're going to throw on the grill. My mother didn't like spice. Finally got her to using some green chilies, later on, and she'd say, that's hot. I said, no, Mama, that's not hot. She never even put a jalapeno in the garden.
Oh, no kidding.
I mean, I was fortunate enough to get to be around an old Mexican cook out there in the Gila wilderness when I was guiding elk hunters, and He kept a tow sack full of dried chilies with us everywhere we went. I didn't speak a whole lot of Spanish then. He didn't speak any English, but I learned what peppers were. I probably use more dried peppers than I do fresh peppers. There's a whole lot better flavor to me.
Okay. Were you a 10-year-old that was interested in cooking even at 10 years old, or is that something that come on?
I can remember when I was probably 8 or 9, my mother let me make a chocolate cake. I thought it was the grandest thing ever. And then she said I could wash dishes, and I really didn't like that part of it. But all them old-timers with Daddy and my oldest brother, Randy, they'd gonna go gather cattle somewhere. You know, it'd be 10 degrees of a morning, wind blowing 45, 50 mile an hour, and I'm thinking, I bet it's pretty nice in that kitchen. So if I got a chance, I'd stay in there. I loved Cowboy. You know, I spent a lot of time with a lot of great cowboys in my country, and them old-timers were salty the earth people, and they'd teach you a lot of life's lessons.
I know you rode bulls. Did you do other events?
Oh, I roped some for a while.
Team rope, calf rope?
Both.
Both, okay.
My oldest brother, Randy, he was one of them. You know how older brothers are. Have you got any older brothers?
I am the older brother.
Okay. Older brother kill a younger brother off any time in his life if he can. And Randy was a very gifted person. He started training 2-year-old colts when he was about 11. He just had a knack for it.
Wow.
Back then, there wasn't so much as a round pin. You know, you just snubbed something up and got on it. And I can remember telling Daddy, he'd tell Daddy, there's got to be a better way than this. Got to be something that's a little easier to do than just getting on one, taking off. Which them old-timers, that was Sunday afternoon entertainment.
Oh, yeah.
Go catch up a bunch of broncs and put a bunch of little people on them, see what happened. It was something that Randy took to very well. He was very gifted at it. He could walk in a pen of 1,000 horses and in 20 minutes tell you which two are going to be the best. It was something that really went back to my mother. She said, we're not here on earth to judge people. But she said, you look at people, horses, dogs, children, everybody, for a soft eye. And it's the same way in horses. He was always good at it. It was, I don't know, something that they'd teach you every time you was horseback. It wouldn't necessarily be about cattle or horses. You know, It was just about life.
Yep.
We learned that we were stewards of the land. It was there for us to take care of. I will never forget the old men that I got to be around, plus the country I got to see. I told Shannon when she come along, long years after that, we'd be on a ranch somewhere, 300,000 acres, be there 7 weeks cooking. I'd say it's a rough life, but I said, you're going to see country that people don't even know exists. It's not on a GPS. There's no phone signal. I said, it's the greatest place in the world. I've always had the greatest view out my kitchen window that there's ever been.
Now, how far do you live from where you grew up?
Right now, we live 9 miles from where I originally grew up. When my mother and dad moved to town, when I was about 8, probably. And at that time, we were on the edge of town, and Hollis was a booming little community there because on Saturdays, everybody went to town.
So like a booming community of 500 or?
Oh, I had about 2,000 in it then.
2,000, okay.
You know, and now it's on a good day, if you're counting dogs and cats and horses, you might have 1,200. It grew for a while, and then in late 80s, it just went away. A lot of the businesses went out. And if kids weren't into farm or agriculture or ranching, they didn't stay.
They had to go, yeah.
A lot of the old timers have died off. At one time, they claimed that southwestern Oklahoma was the irrigation capital of Oklahoma plus cotton. You know, we've been in a drought ever since Noah left. Irrigation wells and water table ain't near what they used to be.
Right.
It's hurt a lot of farmers and ranchers down there because Shannon made this assumption one time, not an assumption, just a point of view. We're sitting around the wagon, there's a bunch of old cowboys in there, and the number one thing that they talked about was rain.
Oh, yeah.
When is it going to rain, or we hope it rains? Or
my dad, it's we could spend 20 minutes talking about rain.
Yeah. You know, and it was always the weather. And Mother Nature's been in control of my cooking ever since I started outside because you never know what you're going to get. You know, I've cooked in minus 15 and I've cooked in 115.
You got to have a big range of skill to get both right, don't you?
Yeah, and it's totally different, too, whether you're at sea level or whether you're at 10,000 foot.
Yeah, how much wind you got coming across the Dutch oven? Yeah.
It's always been a challenge, and no one taught me. You know, it was always something that was just trial and error. I can remember when I was first cooking for elk hunters, and we was at about 9,000 foot, and I couldn't figure out why biscuits wouldn't rise. And one of them hunters asked me, he said, is this flatbread? I said, it is today, but it might be a little taller tomorrow, but it's pretty flat today. But then you get to figuring out, try to relate back to that chemistry and some of that science you knew when you was a kid. Baking powder and baking soda added to that will create a little rise on high altitude.
Okay.
It gets better with time. You figure things out. There's a lot of variables that come with elevation, but also with humidity. I like a challenge. I like to go somewhere. We'll be somewhere. We was in Tennessee cooking one time, and they'd had a major ice storm. They didn't have no wood, nothing that was dry. And I cooked 800 biscuits that morning in a Dutch oven with a propane torch. Heat the bottom, heat the top of the oven, back
Oh
and
my
forth.
god, like just rosebud or
Yeah,
oh be dang.
it's loud.
800?
Yeah, but you can get her done.
Would they come out good?
Oh, yeah, can't tell the difference.
Oh be dang.
You have to learn to improvise on a ranch, especially. You can start out with a plan that's A, B, and C, but you better have X, Y, and Z before you get through.
At the horseshoeing school, plan B is always the same, and that's go faster.
Yeah,
I don't care which pedal you pick, but hit one,
yeah, I hear you're on that one.
I would like a little bit more Kent Rollins history. You got out of high school, and did you hit the rodeo trail, go to college, military? What did you do, sir?
I thought I was smart enough at the time. My dad worked at the vet clinic there in Hollis. He was like the vet. He just didn't have the degree.
Okay.
Because we had doctored cattle and took care of everything for everybody in our country forever and ever. They'd send a vet from Childress, Texas once a week, and Daddy'd run it the rest of the time. But I thought, I'm going to go vet school. So I went to OSU.
In Stillwater?
Yeah.
Okay.
Even got a job at the vet clinic, the teaching hospital. I was sort of, I don't know, I'd say more of an equine specialist in a way, but it was through common knowledge.
Okay. Were you shoeing horses on the side? Because you know how to shoe horses.
I did some, not like my dad. He done so many for years.
So he had a business of shoeing horses.
Yeah.
And you shod for friends and
Yeah.
a little bit of beer money.
Yeah, and that, plus you had to do your own.
Right.
When you got working horses, somebody always throws a shoe, or somebody needed shod, or somebody needed trimming. Then next thing you know, somebody say, hey, could you do my granddaughters, and I know you know how that is. Be some Shetland that was maybe about a little over knee high, and you're just thinking, let's just knock him out and turn him upside down.
Oh, yeah. They're worse to shoe than a big horse by far.
But then I was riding bulls at the time. I'd started when I was about 14.
So were you on the college rodeo circuit?
Some.
This would be like 1975, 76?
77, 78.
77, 78. Okay.
Yeah, I graduated in 75. Went up there and was riding bulls some, working at the vet clinic, trying to go to school, and then I got to thinking, I like certain classes, but I really didn't like organic chemistry.
Of course not.
I didn't like philosophy. I didn't like political science, but I did like beef science, And then I got to grading meat. Then I'd be in the meat lab. At the end of the day, I could cut me off a steak and take home, So I'm thinking, this is not a bad job here. I can get fed. I would call back home and I'd talk to my dad because we worked together side by side for so long. And he'd tell me about the problems he was having, or they're going to go work cattle for so-and-so the next day or something like this. And I'm thinking, he's not going to ask you for help. He's too proud. But I know he needs help, So I went back.
How old was your dad about this point?
Oh, he was probably late 40s.
Late 40s, okay.
Yeah. And he was about 6'3", weighed about 240, but it's just solid muscle.
Big man.
Yeah.
No wonder he didn't like them cots.
No, he didn't. I moved back to Hollis. We was together nearly every day. I was there to where I knew what was going on.
You left Stillwater and just went to ranching.
Went back to Hollis to help my dad, yeah. We had very little farm ground. We planted some wheat and oats, just mostly to have some grazing, but the oats for grain for horses and cattle. We run a lot of cattle for other people.
Okay, so you were background and stuff like that.
We had a lot of wheat pasture yearlings that we'd take care of. We calved, I don't know how many thousands of heifers for people every year. It's one of them things that just sort of come natural, that you enjoyed. And my oldest brother, Randy, was working on different ranches in Texas at the time, and I'd go and visit them some and come back. I guess about 82, my mother's brother called, lived out north of Silver City, and he said, I need some help this season guiding hunters. I know that you can do this, but he said, I also need a cook. And he said, I know your mama taught you to cook. And we would pack in 21 miles.
So you're only like 25 years old now.
27.
27, okay, wow.
We'd pack into the furthest part of the Gila Wilderness because there was more trophy elk there because they wasn't pushed.
Right.
And we'd tell people, be in shape, know how to ride, or you ain't going to go. It was one of them deals. I remember him throwing out 2 Dutch ovens and some cast iron skillets, and he said, here, you can cook. It taught me some very valuable lessons on about altitude, atmosphere, and how much sorry wood they might have. You'd get lucky every once in a while find some little old brush oak or post oak, growing. But it wasn't like me just going out in pasture and cutting a mesquite tree. I don't know. I did that off and on 4 or 5 seasons.
Did that pay pretty good?
Yeah, back at the time, you look at it now, a 5-day elk hunt probably cost you $10,000 to $15,000. 5-day elk hunt for us back then was $2,500.
Right.
Time you take out groceries and then me and the uncle split it, but still is more than wages for cowboying at the time. Might have been $30 a day, maybe $40 at the most.
Yeah. 1987, I was getting $23 to shoe a horse.
Yeah.
And I was rich.
Yeah.
I had more money than all my buddies.
Yeah, that's what I'd tell people. I'd say, I'm making more money than I ever made in my life. Got out of there, and I guess the last season I did was about 87, 88. And my dad was going through cancer at the time. And so I stayed pretty close to home after that for quite some time. Still riding bulls within 100 miles of the house and making a good living at it. The good Lord had blessed me. I didn't get hurt bad. It was one of them deals to where I really enjoyed it. And I'd figured out there was a lot of difference when I was riding when I was 18 or 19 than when I was 27, 28.
No kidding.
It was more mental for me than it was physical. And I stayed in good shape most of the time. But I rode bulls till I was 37.
Boy, that's some longevity in bull riding now. Wow.
And it wasn't as many after I got 35. Instead of making 50 or 60, I'd cut it back to 20, 25, and I'd just go to the ones I wanted.
Yeah.
But the ground got insanely hard. You didn't bounce like you used to bounce.
Well, it is drier now than it was. Right?
Oh, yeah. And I would tell myself, I don't mind riding them, but I don't think I can get up no more, And I got to where I couldn't get away from them as good as I used to.
Sure.
Get a hooking and a thrashing.
So I rode bulls a little bit in the 80s, and it was, you're just in your shirt and cowboy hat. And then now, they're way more protected.
Yeah.
Where you're wearing a helmet or a vest or anything?
I didn't even have that stuff back then.
So you never got to that point?
There's a lot of difference in rodeo bulls now than what there was then.
You look at a PBR bull, the lowest level PBR bull would have been more ranked than what you see at the NFR back then.
Yeah. I mean, they're athletes. They've got a great bloodline behind them. I rode some bulls. They said it hadn't been rode in 5 or 6 years. And I see some of them now that I'm thinking, I don't know if I could even put my rope on him.
Right. It's unbelievable, isn't it?
And they are some gifted athletes that out there. I was there when Freckles Brown rode Tornado in Oklahoma City.
1967, wasn't it?
Yeah. And I remember going to a bull riding. It was an invitational deal down at Gene Autry, Oklahoma. Freckles was a judge. And I got to sit down and visit with him about 4 or 5 hours one day.
Man, how cool would that have been?
He was a great person, which Randy, my oldest brother, had rodeoed so long.
Now, was he rough stock too, or was
he did it all. He was a very gifted calf roper, but also he rode bareback horses. He rode bulls. He'd ride a saddle bronc.
Did he go to the finals?
No. He went to high school finals and then rodeoed through college. He was on a collegiate team at Panhandle State up there. He told me, he said, roping's a whole lot easier than riding bulls.
Oh, yeah.
I said, yeah, but it lasts longer sometime. But he got to run around with Marvin Paul, Jim Shoulder's son, and we got to know Jim and them pretty well, and a bunch of them old stock contractors back then, Larry Mahan. It was always, you look back at it now, and I was 12, 13 years old when I first met Jim Shoulders and them. It's a different breed of people, really, in a way, from what there is now. And I look at the pictures that we have. I look at it, too, by the hats they wore, the crease that were in them.
Right. It is a different style.
It is. It was a time in life that cowboy was king and rodeo was the best thing there was, and we always had a good time with it.
What is Randy doing now? Is he still cowboying?
No, Randy's, let me see, I'm 66. Randy's 72. He is up in Tahlequah, Oklahoma. He runs a ministry in some rest homes and some homeless shelters. He had a hard life there for a while. Went through many divorces. He had so many really bad horse wrecks the last 20 years of his life. He told me one time, he said, I'm going to quit and I ain't going to get on nothing. He said, because I know if I ever get back on one, I won't want to quit again. His old shoulders is messed up. He's had rotator cuffs on both sides redone. His old back is bad. He said that's from too many hours in the saddle. He wouldn't have traded it for nothing in the world.
Yeah, of course not. And then your second brother, is he
He's a doctor.
a doctor? What kind?
He has his doctor's degree in bobwhite quail management. He is the quail whisperer. I can remember one time me and Randy was down there after Daddy died, gathering an old bull out from pasture. It was about 9 degrees, spitting snow, wind blowing, you know. He looked over at me and he said, "Little brother," he said, "you ever think we're dumb?" And I said, "Sometime." He said, "I reckon Dale's probably somewhere looking at a book and it's worn."
Is Dale another brother?
He was a middle brother. He was the one that was got his doctor's degree. And I said, either he's a lot smarter than us or he figured this out a whole lot quicker than we did. And he looked at me, he said, "But would you trade?" I said, "Not a day ever." Dale was a very gifted hunter too.
Okay.
We all hunted because hunting was a way of life. You put food on the table. He got into bobwhite quail. He has a quail research station down there in Texas now.
And can you make a good living as a doctor of bobwhite quail?
Yeah, he does a lot of consulting for different wildlife people,
Okay.
but also he had a master's in range and wildlife management.
Okay.
He's about semi-retired now. Let me see, Dale is 69. There was me. Well, Randy and Cindy were born. They were twins.
Okay.
And then I never did know this till about 4 years ago. Randy said when he was 5 years old, said Mama had a little baby that was stillborn.
Okay.
He said, we put him in a shoebox because we didn't have no money, and we took him out to the cemetery and buried him.
Oh, my.
And I said, "Do you know where this was?" I just sort of like to mark it. He said, "No, I ain't got a clue." And then she had Dale 2 years after that, and then she lost another set of twins, and then she had me. So there was 2 sets of twins that my mother had, and my daddy come from a twin. He had a twin sister.
I hear it runs in the family. You never knew those stories until lately.
No, not till, I didn't know about Mama losing that one young'un.
So your mom lived with that all those years?
Yeah. I knew about David and Deborah. They were a set of twins that were born between me and Dale. We have them buried at the cemetery.
Okay.
But I never heard about this other one.
I'll be dang.
There was a tougher generation of people then than they are now.
Boy, you're not just kidding.
My dad and them went through the Dust Bowl and the Depression, the stories that they'd tell, and, I think, how'd you survive? But it wasn't like it affected one family.
Right.
There's a lot of folks affected by that.
We run our horseshoe school a little bit like that. It's one of the hardest places to be, but you're standing shoulder to shoulder with another guy going through it. So it's like military. It helps,
Yeah.
So now I've got you to about 27. You're done guiding elk. Are you back in Hollis?
Yeah, we're farming and ranching. Ain't doing much farming, doing a lot of ranching, working cattle for different people, and did that for, I don't know, forever, seemed like. And then there was an old feller we took care of cattle for and calved all his heifers out, and he was a carpenter. And I remember Mama saying something about she needed to remodel the kitchen. So she got Wendell to come remodel the kitchen, and we calved out 60 heifers for free, which was fine.
Yeah.
He traded out, but he told me, he said, "You ever need something to do?" He said, "You can come carpenter with me."
Did you help him on the kitchen?
Oh, yeah.
Okay, all right. He saw you had some skill.
Yeah, so he got me to, if I wasn't doing nothing else, I'd call him. I'd say, "What you got going on?" "Well, we're finna build a pole barn. We're finna build a house. We're going to lay some brick." So I learned how to do it all. Got to where I make cabinets, anything in the world, and it's something I enjoyed. I've never had a job I didn't like because there's something in all of it that you learn from everything you do. People say, "You liked washing dishes?" And I said, there's something about a piece of washing dishes on that old wood stove in the middle of 300,000 acres where it's just you and Mother Nature and God sitting out there. And I said, until you've stuck your hands down there in that hot water when it's 3 degrees outside, you're not going to know that piece.
Sure. So really, it sounds like looking back, you really wouldn't have been anything else. You've done everything Kent Rollins way then.
Yeah, and I never knew about getting a chuck wagon. My dad always told me, he said, find a job you like to do it better than everybody else, and you won't never have a job. When I ended up buying a wagon.
Yeah, I was going to ask about that. So it's an old Studebaker.
Yeah.
How did you find that?
People got to asking me, they'd say, "Hey, you know anybody can cook? We need a cook on this ranch." And I said, "No." Then I got to thinking, cook make twice what cowboys do. That's a letter of the law. Always been that way.
So a cowboy making $20, you make 40.
Yeah, and I'm thinking that's a lot of money right there. And I know how to cook. I just need a wagon. So I got to looking, and word of mouth, there wasn't no such thing as Google back then. So you'd pick up a phone, you'd call somebody, and you'd say, "Hey, I'd sort of like to have a wagon if you know where one's at. Well, word to get out, there'd be 40 or 50 people looking. And this guy called me. He said, I know where there's a Studebaker wagon in Spur, Texas. All right. Drove down there and got it. And I evened up buying a team at the same time.
What year was that?
1992.
And so how much was a Studebaker wagon in 1992, if you don't mind telling us?
Wagon, fly, poles, team of horses, and a harness was $9,000.
Wow.
And they were Belgium quarter crosses, strawberry roans, weighed
My
about
goodness.
2,100 apiece.
That'd be worth 10 times that now, huh?
Oh, yeah. I redone the wagon after I got it. Had two guys that sort of helped me. We was going to go in the catering business, sort of the envision. You take two people that are working at a job, and then one guy that quit a job, because there was a time, Chris, when this guy offered me a job running a road grader for the county. I had insurance, I had retirement, I had benefits.
So you did that?
Yeah.
Okay.
And then I got to thinking, I ain't got time to do all this other stuff.
Right.
And I quit because I didn't want to look back and say what if or shoulda, coulda, woulda. And there was a lot of people that chastised me really bad, saying, you got to be a fool for giving up a job like that.
No kidding.
I said, no. I said, I'm going to do what I think the good Lord intended for me to do. I can remember cooking for so many people by myself. And I figured out it's not that big a task to feed 40 people by yourself. If you can feed 12 to 15 cowboys 3 meals a day, you can feed 40 people. And then you'd think, well, then you got to load the wagon, get it on the trailer, drive 300 or 400 miles, cook for somebody else. Word got out pretty quick that I would feed anybody in the United States. And you took every job back then. If you could make $50, you thought you was doing something. I can remember going to the coast of Alabama. I can remember cooking in California. I remember cooking in Alaska.
Did you take the Studebaker to Alaska?
No, they flew me up there. I would have loved to took it, though. I just love to see the country.
Yeah.
It's a deal that I thought, you can do this full time, and it's probably the best thing in the world. And when I took my first ranch job in 93, I was in South Abilene, Texas.
So by ranch job, you mean cooking on the ranch for the Cowboys during the spring branding?
During spring works. Word got out that, hey, this guy was a pretty good cowboy, but he's a hell of a cook. And cowboys respected me because I'd been on both sides of that fire.
Right. You were just a cook that never rode a horse. Yeah.
People started calling.
As in ranches?
Yeah.
Okay.
But then people would say, hey, we hear you're a pretty good cook. Can you come cook for my son's bar mitzvah? And I'd say, a what? And they'd tell me, and they'd say, can you feed 400 people? I said, yeah, I'll hire 2 to go with me.
Would you feed 400 people out of Dutch ovens and Bertha?
Yeah.
Wow.
You get 16-inch Dutch ovens lined up out there with biscuits in them, because you can't just cook 400 biscuits. You need at least 600. And I had a menu. I said, hey, you can have a steak. You can have a 16-ounce center-cut bone-in pork chop. You can have brisket. You can have chicken fried steak. Take your pick. Sides go out, whatever you want. I did a lot of brisket at times, back when brisket was considered really a trash meat, 8-9 cents a pound.
Wow.
It was cheap. I can remember after feeding 400 and this guy paid me, I'm thinking, I'll never have to work again. And it was just $15 plate.
You got to live on the interest, huh?
It was something that comes sort of easy to me because I knew the shortcuts you could take, but you're not shortcutting on quality. You're just shortcutting time. We've fed 1,000 steaks before.
So did you have more grills going, or was it?
I'd have 2.
Okay.
You learn, you're going to cook steak to medium rare, you cook them rare and hold them. I built some steam tables that I could hold food in. And sure, we're not cooking something that's sitting there 2 hours.
Right.
You got big enough grills, and old Chris Morton over there, I call him the Bionic Cowboy. I probably fed him on more ranches than any cowboy that I've ever known. He's had 7 or 8 hip replacements due to bad wrecks.
Oh, man.
He can flip a steak. It became a deal to where people got to reaching out so much, I couldn't fit them all in. And then I'm thinking, well, I could go on this catering deal and clear $5,000, or I could go to this ranch for 3 weeks and make $2,500.
Right. Absolutely.
And I'm thinking, my heart wants to be at that ranch, but the banker want me to be at this other deal. So I had to pick and choose sort of what come along. After a divorce and Shannon come along, I was still catering. I asked her one time, I said, you like to travel? And she said, I love to travel. I don't think she thought it meant with a wagon.
She's thinking flying to Paris.
Yeah. She's a tough lady. She's my best friend, the love of my life. And She knew cowboys. She's from Elko, Nevada. That's cowboy country. She knew wagons, but she had never been around a wagon. And at the time, I was running a cooking school, teaching people how to become a ranch cook. State MTP, you cook, just like I would on a ranch. You get up 4 in the morning. She came cooking school. And I thought right there, this is one tough lady. And she asked me, she said, you have a website? I said, who?
What year was that?
Maybe 95 or 6, 7.
Okay, that long ago.
Yeah.
Okay.
When I first met her, I was entertaining and doing a cooking seminar in Elko, Nevada at the Cowboy Poetry Festival up there. Maybe it was 2000. I don't know. 2002, somewhere along there.
Okay, all right.
She was asking me up there, because we did a sourdough biscuit, chicken fried steak workshop, and then we entertained. She was asking me about, because I didn't have a computer.
Now, was she just attending, or was she going with you?
No, she was working for the Folk Life Center up there at Elko. That's her hometown. And I didn't know who she was from Adam or Eve at the time. She said, how do you stay busy? Word of mouth and a full stomach. And she said, so you don't have a website? I said, no, ma'am, wouldn't know what it was if I had one. And she said, you got an email address? And I said, Route 1, Box 318. She said, that ain't it neither. She said, how about I come to one of your cooking schools and I'll make you a website? I said, is that what you do? She said, no, but I can do it. So she made me one. I didn't even have a computer. I couldn't look at it no way. And then she come back the next year.
So it was a whole year between that website and the next time you saw her?
Yeah. Then I didn't see her for about another year, and she come back to cooking school, and she takes some more pictures. And then she come back again, brought her sister with her, and they went through it. We stayed in touch.
And you had a website by now?
Yeah.
But she was running it. You weren't checking it.
I don't have no idea what it was, And people would say, I found you on your website. I'd say, glad you did. And at the time, we'd done some of our first TV for some folks.
Okay, so now you said we've done some of our first TV. Did she do that with you?
No, me and a dog.
You and a dog. And
me and Rosebud.
Who filmed?
It was the very first one we ever did was a deal for QVC, the Home Shopping Network.
What were you selling?
We wasn't selling. They was doing what they called 50 states in 50 weeks, and they wanted me to represent Oklahoma. So these crew was all from Pennsylvania, and they come down there, and they said, we just want to follow you one day, whatever you're doing. And an old bull had got out and went across the river. And I said, you can't follow me where I'm going. And he looked over at me and he said, it's a rental. We'll take it anywhere you go. And I said, you ain't going to cross that river. I promise you. We set up the wagon later on that evening, cooked, and I can remember turning out the lantern. Ain't a light down there in 50 miles, One of them looked out there at the night sky and he said, I didn't know it could get this dark. I said, you get out of town, it will.
Yep.
Then after that, we did some stuff for the Food Network off and on. Oklahoma had sent me different places to do TV, for different folks.
At this point, Shannon is not involved with this part of it. Okay.
Because when I started doing cooking schools, I did twice a year, take 4 students a year.
Oh, so they were that small?
Yeah.
Because the ones I see on YouTube, you had,
10 or 11.
dozen. Yeah.
There's a lot of them folks that came to them first 5 or 6 years that I had that made ranch cook, and that's really what I was after.
So they were actually training to do the job.
Yeah.
Not just a city boy's fantasy. Okay.
No. 4 of them ended up buying wagons, after they came. There was 2 that went into catering business, but 3 pretty good ranch cooks. They don't cook anymore, but they did for a while, and they'd still call me every once in a while. They'd say, hey, I'm thinking about fixing this, but I really need to know, and I'd say, hey, you call anytime you want. It was, I don't know, even when it was, Chris, when we first got together, because I'd went through a divorce and was moving to Texas to work on a ranch, and she came with me. I told her, I said, it's a rough lifestyle where I'm going, but I said the benefits are far better than money. She fell right in there. She had been to cooking school enough. She knew how to cook. She was a great baker in a Dutch oven. And I remember the first catering job she ever did with me. We went to Edmond, Oklahoma on the 4th of July. It was 106 degrees and humidity about 70%.
Oh, man.
And we was feeding 250. She said, and what am I going to cook? I said, I'm going to help you make the bread, but you're going to cook all the bread. And I said, you know me. We ain't going to burn no bread. She said, well, you may have to help me. I said, I'll be there. I said, you got this. I walked off and left her with all them Dutch ovens because I knew in her mind she could do it. She just needed to be put there.
Now, was she undercover or was it out in the open?
No, she was out in the open, but it was shade.
Okay, all right.
It's miserable killing hot, and where she's from in Nevada, they don't have that hot.
Right.
And we got through that evening, and I couldn't find her. And I was looking around. She went up to the house and was visiting with this lady that run this deal. Air conditioner was on in there. And I went in there and I said, what do you think? She said, a whole lot cooler in here than it is out there. And I said, guess what? She said, yeah, I know, we got to load it all on that trailer. And I said, yeah. But she never quit. She never backed down. She was the first lady that I've ever known of that cooked on the Bell Ranch, because they didn't allow women in cow camps,
Right.
you know, off a chuck wagon. There's no days off, no spa days. At the time, she had just started taking a bunch of pictures. We were doing a little filming, but one of them little handy cam cameras, you know.
So she was starting to film you and starting the idea of your channel. Okay.
I think the first time we was at the Bell and we were there 6 weeks, she took 3,500 pictures.
Man. And this is probably with film camera, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. It was something that I saw in her. I said, you know, I hope you take this the right way, but I said, you have rugged beauty. I said, all the way to your heart. I said, it don't matter what Mother Nature throws in here at us. You act like you've been in it all your life, and I know you haven't. And I said, you're tough. And I said, I admire you for that. We'd cooked on other ranches and went back out there the next year, and they'd droughted out, and the old country that was green was just blowing dirt. We'd been there about 4 weeks. It was about 90-something degrees. We'd fed them lunch. They was riding out. An old wind hit and dirt was blowing, blowed teepees down, blowed fly down. And I looked over there at her, and I could tell she was crying because it was wiping the dirt off her face.
Oh, man.
I looked at her, and I said, Sugar, you ain't got to be out here in this. I said, go get in that pickup, start it up, turn the cooler on, go to headquarters, get some groceries, stay up for a while. And she took the cuff of that old sleeve, and she wiped them tears off. She turned around there and looked at me, and she said, this is what we do, and we do it better than anybody else. She said, if you can't handle it, maybe you ought to go home. And I said, yes, ma'am. From there, we filmed while we were out there. We thought, you know, maybe there's something to this. And at the time, I got offered a deal for the Food Network to cook on Chopped Grill Masters.
How did you get that? How did they find you?
This is going to be their largest outdoor production. And they shot it in Tucson at the old film set of High Chaparral. And they thought, you know, this is sort of cowboy deal. We need to search, see if there's a cowboy cooking somewhere, you know. So they took 15 chefs and a cowboy.
And is that where you beat Bobby Flay? CJW Pinot Ranch. Once Jacqueline found out the truth about our American meat supply, she was on a mission to make sure her family was fed as good as was humanly possible. That meant raising animals that were not eating GMO grain or living in concentrated farming conditions. Not cheap or easy, but so worth it. It became the family business to provide American families with the highest quality meats raised in the way that God intended. Regenerative beef, pork, and chicken that will make you feel better than you have in a long time. If you spend a week eating better and then decide to go ahead and have that fast food meal, your body will instant message you in disagreement. Try CJW Pinot's nourishing meat for thriving families. Their nationwide shipping makes it easy. Visit cjwpinotranch.net and enter to win a $100 gift card today.
That was before that. Bobby learned that it could get really hot in camp. He probably won't be back. I'll just put it that way.
I'm sorry to sidetrack you. So you go to Tucson.
You know, I can remember going to this little meet and greet deal they had. And I've got great friends that are chefs, culinary trained. This guy come up to me and he said, where are you from? And I said, Hollis, Oklahoma. He said, are you a chef? I said, no, sir. I'm a ranch cook. How'd you get here? I said, I drove. How'd you make it? I told Shannon, you know, I don't know if anybody's watched the show Chopped. You know, they give you this basket that's got some really weird groceries in it and expect you to cook it, you know, and you have 20 minutes in the appetizer round, start off the bat, and half the stuff that's in that basket I ain't never seen in my life, you know. And Shannon told me, she said, you'll be fine when you feel fire. I said, well, I just want to make it through one round, just one. End up making it through the first round, the second round.
I don't know about the show. Were you cooking on a Dutch oven in front of fire?
It was, they called it live fire, is some Weber grills and a gas grill.
Oh, okay. All right.
They had some Dutch ovens, but you really didn't have time to fire one of them up when, you know, 20 minutes is the time limit.
So you couldn't have it preheated and stuff ready? Okay.
No,
right.
it was a strange deal. After I win my round that day, ended up making it to the finals. I remember one of these judges telling me, they said, no matter what we threw at you today, you just kept on cooking it, making it simple. And I said, life is simple. I said, y'all trying to complicate it with food. Just cook the way you're supposed to cook. Don't worry about none of the rest of it. I can remember getting on that bus the next morning about 4 to go back out there for the finals. And there was this feller that was sitting back there in the bus. And he said, you the cowboy guy that's here today? And I said, I reckon. He said, I'm going to tell you, he said, competition's real today. He said, don't be surprised when you're the first one to go home.
Is that another competitor told you that?
Yeah, and I just looked at him and I'm thinking, I'll not say nothing, but I believe I'm going to. And I said, it's apparent to me you're a legend in your own mind. I said, just stay out of the way is all I can tell you. And he ended up going home first that day.
Did it break your heart?
No, it's one of them deals to where I remember what Tom Morehouse said so many times. Don't tell people what you can do. Show them what you can do. I don't care what you're cooking. I'm going to try to cook it the best way I think I can cook it.
Of course.
Might not be the way you want it cooked, but...
Did you end up winning?
No, we got second.
Second. Now, did that come with big prize money?
No.
No.
It was one shot, $50,000. And me and Shannon was broke as two church mice at the time. I can remember go out there at 4:30 that morning, and time you get through, if you're still in the competition, there's interviews, then there's more interviews, then there's more interviews. You get back to motel 10 o'clock at night.
How many days?
3 days.
Okay.
And by then you're wore out time you get to the finals, you know. And these guys that are in the finals, and I'm not making excuses for me, but they had 3 days off, some of them.
Oh.
Just waiting for the finals.
Okay, so they had other chefs from other shows that were coming.
Well, they had 16 contestants. They did 4 per round.
I see. You won your round, but it just happened to be the one right before the finals. Okay.
Yeah. It's sort of like drawing that eliminator pin of bulls.
Right, right.
But nobody remembered who won first. They remembered who won second. And I can remember telling them right before I left, I said, it's a long way from the Texas Panhandle in minus 20 in a bedroll to here. And I said, I just want y'all to know we're some of the best people in the world. And I said, we can cook. We don't care. You got dry wood, we'll make something.
You know, you have that quality, if you don't mind me saying, you have a presence, but it comes through on the camera like very few people. You can watch 10 minutes of one of your videos and feel like you know you. So have you always had that?
Yeah. When I was in high school, I made a D in speech because I hated to get up in front of people and talk.
Really?
When my dad went through cancer the last time, and I started writing a lot of poetry, but it was just to deal with what I was having to go through for him. But it taught me that there's a message, and you need to share it. I can remember the producer out there at CHOP, she'd come by there and she said, you're the only person I know that I have ever filmed in my life that doesn't change when the camera's on you. And I looked at her and I said, man, I ain't changed socks in a week. I said, I ain't going to change nothing else. But I always told people, I mean, we've done some motivational speaking and everything else. Be who you are. Don't be something you can't be. You can pretend at some things in life, but when it comes down to the end of it, you have to put that life out there. It can't be something that you're pretending to be. It's always been something that's rang true. You know, you just do what you do and try to do it the best of your ability. After that show, we had a lady call us from New York City. She said, I'd like to do a cookbook with y'all. I didn't know how the cookbook world. We'd self-published too, me and Shannon.
Oh, okay.
Long time ago. I said, ma'am, I can't afford a cookbook like you're talking about. And she laughed and she said, you don't know how this works. We're going to pay you. And I said, you're going to pay me to make my cookbook? She said, yeah. And she is from Tennessee. She knew some of what's going on in the world. Sort of like a horse sale. When you get this book in its rare form, it'll go to publishing houses, and then they're going to bid, and we'll take the bid we want. And Janice she's the greatest book agent I've ever seen in my life. And she's been with us through all of them.
She's still with you?
Oh, yeah. Great people. You know, when we signed a contract for that first book, we went to New York City. I'd been up there a few times for the Food Network, but I never had time to look around, see anything, you know. And I admire history a great deal, but also I love to look at old buildings. And the stonework and the artwork on top of all these old buildings up there is just fantastic. I'd be walking around like this, looking around all the time, and somebody say, you looking for terrorists? I said, no, I'm looking at that concrete work up there. It's something, too. I was raised, Chris, where you speak to people when you meet them. You tip your hat to the ladies. You open a door for somebody. Told Shannon one morning up there in New York City, I said, I'm finna go get some coffee. She always gives me a hard time. She said, be nice to people. I said, I'll be nice. And I'd talk to people going down the sidewalk. You know, some of them never even would look up. And I kept me a little old tablet in my pocket.
Were you wearing your cowboy hat?
Yeah.
Oh, good. All right.
If I ever got one that spoke to me, I'd ask him his name. I'd write it down in this little book. I went to get that coffee that morning, and I'd spoke to 20 people. Ain't none of them said nothing. And I opened the door for this guy, and it's like 5 o'clock morning. I said, come on in here, brother. And he just stood there and looked at me. I said, come on in, I'll hold the door open for you. He said, you ain't from here, are you? And I said, no, sir. But I said, it don't matter where you're from, you can have manners. I said, good morning to you. And he just looked at me again. I said, how do you say good morning in New York City? And he said, do what? I said, how do you say good morning in New York City? He said, I guess you just say good morning. I said, was that hard? I said, it seemed pretty easy to me. He said, wherever you come from, you need to go back. And I said, I'll do it when I get ready. And every year we went back.
Did you get his name or he didn't?
No, he didn't make the book. And every year we would go back, I'd visit with more and more people. I mean, I'd go in Saks Fifth Avenue. I'd visit with the doorman. Me and him took pictures. He's wearing my hat. I was wearing his little cap. But I found out people up there, people say, them people's rude. Most of them are just busy people. They think they're too busy to take the time to visit. I sat on a park bench. I'd talk to 40 people. People finally, they just sit down and they'd say, I just love to hear you talk. And we'd tell stories about their lifestyle, my lifestyle, and really there wasn't that much difference, maybe for cultures, but not the way you were brought up, what your values were. We go back now, we were there last year when our last cookbook come out, and you'd be walking down the street now and somebody be on cross the road over there and say, hey, Cowboy Kent, and I'll just cut across traffic and go over and go to visit him. Chopped really got the word out, but YouTube has passed that by so much.
I know. Has Shannon been your producer the whole time?
Producer, editor, she is all of it.
How does she put that together? Because they are amazing videos.
Nobody taught her. We'd be around film crews where somebody was doing something for someone, and Shannon was always asking questions, or what camera you using, what mics you using, And we'd buy these high-dollar cameras, and we finally figured out, you just film it on an iPhone. Every video we got nearly now for the last 5 years has been on an iPhone. We know what mics we use because of wind noise,
Does she edit on like Final Cut Pro, or do you know?
Yeah, she does some Final Cut Pro there for a while. I think that's what she's still on, but she has something else to go with it now. It's above my pay grade.
That's not your wheelhouse.
No. I know what she's doing. I know what it takes. We'll try to do 3 videos a week most of the time, which if it's a short cook, it's maybe 2 hours of filming, 6 to 8 hours of editing.
So a lot of these times you're just cooking just so you can have the video.
Yeah. Yeah, and then the grandkids get the food, or the bank, post office, vet clinic, dogs.
So it's good to be your neighbor.
Yeah. July and August in our country is not friendly. It can be 112 and then you build a fire and it's 172. I guess 3 years ago, we tried to film every week. We was about 4 videos ahead, maybe 5, and I come in there and I told her, I said, I am fried. And I said, I can do it, but I said, let's take a week off if we can, 2 weeks off, and let's not do something. And she went and shot 3 videos that day, which is very highly unlikely. Most of the time, we just 2 at the most, mostly just 1. But we was trying to get something out for a special occasion deal. I'd been out the barn working on the wagon, doing some stuff, come back in the house about 10:30 that night, and she's still at the computer, which she's been there since noon. I said, how's it going, sugar? And she looked up at me and she said, I'm getting mighty tired of looking at you. And I said, I don't know how I'm supposed to take that. I tried to answer as many comments on YouTube as I could.
That's hard.
And it got to where it was just so overwhelming. But I'd get up every morning, same time anyway, about 4:15, 4:30, get that laptop computer out and get after it. And that morning there was first comment was, good morning, Mr. Rollins. This is Lance Corporal Cody Childers, currently stationed in Afghanistan. He said, what we did today was really not pleasant, but there was 9 of us gathered around the laptop computer and you made us feel like we were home. Please don't quit. God bless you. I went there and woke Shannon up. I said, we got to film again today. And she said, I thought we was taking some time off. I said, no, there's some people counting on it. We had such a great following of servicemen and women and veterans and everything. And we got so many touching emails and letters from everybody in the armed services. But I got a call 3 weeks later to the day from Cody's mother. And she said, we lost Cody to an IED. And she said, the flag that we flew over his service in Washington, D.C., he wanted you to have at that wagon. And I said, ma'am, I can't take that. She said, oh, you'll take it. I promise you. And it's the flagging that we have at that wagon every day we're out. And I tell people, I don't tell people that story to make you feel sad. I tell you that story to let you know you make a difference in somebody's life. It can be with a handshake. It can be with a smile, a pat on the back, a thank you. Don't ever think that you don't make a difference to someone, because everyone does.
Man, what a story, huh?
It's something that I look back on all the time now. I got to meet his mother about a year after that. We was doing an event in North Carolina, and she came. Me and her cried for a long time. The outreach that we get coming back to us from so many people. You say, hey, your videos got me through chemo. I lost my dad today, and I just had to turn you on just because you calmed me down. You may not know what you have till you put it out there in life. And you've got that gift yourself, my friend. You're sharing it with so many people in what you do, in the art of what you do. It changes people's lives. I did a deal it's called Hunts for Heroes, and it was out of really a naval command deal that was out of San Diego, but it was a hunt in Georgia. And they wanted me to come and cook, want to know what it cost. And I said, don't cost a thing. I'll help these people out. They've helped get something for me I didn't have to do. And I remember getting to this old pasture down there in South Georgia, and there was a double-wide trailer sitting out in the middle of this pasture. Had a wraparound porch all the way around it. Wasn't quite dark, but it was getting pretty close. Got out of that pickup, was walking up there on the porch, and I looked down this porch, and here comes this big old fella running at me about 40 miles an hour. And I'm thinking, I don't know him. I hope he slows down, or maybe I can dodge him. It's still hard to talk about in a way. He got to me, and he just picked me up, and he like to broke me in two, just squeezing on me. Tears got to running down his face. And he said, God bless you, Kent Rollins. He said, I've been that guy in the closet with a gun. He said, your videos get me through what I can't get through. He said, you make a difference. He said, for so many people that had PTSD, for so many people that need somebody that they know they can count on, he said, you've been there. I got to meet so many people like that had been through such hard times. And there was one particular, I will never mention his name because me and him are sacred together. He had sat down at the end of that old long porch and wouldn't talk to a soul. You could just see as in his eyes it was empty. They all went out on some hunt that morning and asked him if he wanted to go, and he said, no, I'll never hunt again. So I asked him, I said, well, if you're going to stay here, brother, I said, you can help cook. And he wouldn't even talk to me. Took about 6 hours and 4 beers before I got him out there by that old fire. And I wouldn't ask him questions. I'd just tell him, I'd say, this is what we're going to do. This is what's going to take place. This is how it's going to happen. And he helped me cook 3 days. He probably said 4 words. I got ready to leave, and he come to me and he said, thank you for not putting pressure on me. Thank you for telling me that I can be something that I might not be. Thank you for making me feel like I'm someone that I needed to be. And I said, sir, that's God, not me. And he said, don't quit doing what you're doing, cowboy. And I said, as long as the good Lord will give me air and give me a breath, give me another day, I'll build a fire and cook.
Well, that's amazing. And I should mention that I came to meet you in Lebanon, Missouri, and it's Wagons for Warriors, right? So it's another one of these things, huh?
It is. And, I think this is my 11th year up here. It's a great thing. All these wagon cooks come together. People can buy a ticket for $10, eat off any wagon they want. But it goes to such a great cause, to the servicemen and women and PTSD, and helps pay bills, medical bills, everything else. I got to do an interview last year with a guy that was 5.5 years in a prison camp in Vietnam. I told him, I said, thank you for your service. And he said, I wouldn't have missed it for anything in the world. But he said, thank you for letting us serve the people that needed to be served. And he said, I don't mean that in a bad way. He said, but every day is a special day. And I said, every day should be Veterans Day. We owe them so much. I can't express in words what they've all done from the generations that go way back before us. But people need not to forget, sacrifice didn't come free. And freedom was not always free. I never forget it. Even when me and Shannon pray, I never take for granted the way God loves me, the way Shannon loves me, the country that is free, and the things I get to see.
Well, amen to that. Did you ever think about going to the military?
When I was out there guiding elk hunters, I'm thinking, at that time, I was too young for Vietnam. And then when Desert Storm, the first one started, I was nearly too old. And when I was out there guiding elk hunters, I'm thinking, I could have done what my daddy told me. At one time he told me, he said, you can always join the Army, be a Marine, go in the Army, go to Air Force. 40 foot on a barn was tall enough for me. I didn't need to go in the Air Force.
So you don't like heights?
I don't like to hang out there and look out the edge of a building that's 80 foot tall.
Okay.
And I never was that fond of water that was deeper than 6 foot. So that left two of them out real quick. His dad was in the 7th Cavalry in the Civil War.
Wow.
He was in the 7th Cavalry. His nephew was in the 7th Cavalry, and he would tell me about the bloodline and what it was. And I often felt bad at times, Chris, for knowing that I didn't serve. But I've had so many of them veterans come to me and say, you're serving now.
Oh, absolutely.
I'll never have that honor or privilege. I'm just going to try to lift them up. We close out every YouTube episode with a thank you to the servicemen and women and the veterans. We can never pay them back as much as we owe them.
On your YouTube stuff, do you ever script it? Do you have anything wrote down?
No. Every once in a while, we'll have a little history of something like, this sandwich was originated somewhere in Spain. And, but Sham, she got this idea one time. She said, I'm going to get one of them teleprompters.
Oh, yeah.
And then she thought about it. And she thought, that won't never work. One of the first TV shows I did in 95, I think. And this is live. And it was with, it's called Home and Family. And it was Christina Ferrari was the host. I didn't know who she was, but she was a CoverGirl model. Then she was married to John DeLorean. I didn't know who they was either. Oklahoma flew me out there, the Tourism Council. I went out there and got out there early that morning looking for a cup of coffee. I asked this young fella where one was, and he pointed over to this little trailer house on Universal Studios. And I went over and went to go in the door, and there was this big, tall lady that was coming out there. And I said, excuse me, ma'am. And she looked at me and she said, are you the cowboy guy that's on the show today? And I said, I don't know, ma'am, unless you got more than 2 or 3 of them. I took my hat off and I said, Kent Rollins. She said, oh, you are him. She said, you know who I am, right? And I looked at her and I thought, this is one of them test questions you're supposed to answer right, And I said, no, ma'am. She said, I'm Christina Ferrari. I'm the host of the show. I said, sorry, ma'am, never seen it. She said, do you have a TV? And I said, yes, ma'am. If you turn the antenna right, we get 2 channels. She said, so you do have electricity? I said, yes, ma'am, we got electricity. And you've never seen this show? I said, no, ma'am. They was going to use a teleprompter. And this lady asked me, she said, if you know what you're going to say, I'll write it down. I said, ma'am, I don't know what I'm going to say. She said, this is live TV. She said, there's 5 million people going to see this. I said, I can't see them. I said, does it bother you? She said, no, it ain't bothering me. I said, well, it don't bother me at all. I have more trouble with people, like if we're on a show or something, they'll have this earpiece in your ear, and they say, hey, you need to say this, this, and this. And I'll think, I would have never said that in my life, So I'll just say it in a way that I think it might fit. I might be a little backwards at times, Chris.
Well, you know what? It's absolutely worked for you.
I'm trying.
So you have been gracious and sat with me forever, but there's a couple things we got to do. I always ask my guests, I call this Kelly's contribution. She's my wife that is, I don't know, maybe her and Shannon are wrestling. You said how tough Shannon is. People would rather fight me blindfolded than even try to cross Kelly. I asked people to teach me something unrelated. So, I had one guy tell me how he mows his yard. So do you have anything you can teach me with words?
I would say if you want to be a Dutch oven cook, I'll teach you one thing real quick.
Perfect.
Always use less coals than you think you're going to need.
Okay.
Because people, when they cook something in a Dutch oven, they always put way too many under it, way too many on top. You can finish cooking something to get it done, but when it's burnt, you can't take them away. Firewood and coal management is probably some of the biggest things that we do. If I can teach you one thing with words, and I'm sure you already know this too, my friend, love like it's the last day you got. That's the best thing that I've always instilled in Shannon. And I tell her, the glass is never half empty. It's always half full.
All right. Well, that's awesome. That's very inspirational. Getting on firewood real quick, what's your favorite?
I was raised in mesquite country. And as far as a really hot coal, something that's going to be able to cook something in a Dutch oven, but also you can grill meat with, that's mesquite. But mesquite can be really harsh, too. All we had in our country was mesquite, elm, and bodark. And bodark is really hotter than mesquite.
So bodark, is that hedge?
Yeah, Osage orange or hedge. It's a really live fire that snap, crackles, pops, so we don't like to use it a lot on ranch cooking.
I found it flavored meat kind of funny.
Yeah, I don't like to grill with it.
Yeah, I didn't like it on meat.
You get out, in Shannon's country and you get some manzanita and ironwood. It's even harder and hotter than that, but it's still got a great flavor wood. I got to mix in a lot of fruit woods with different woods in the last 20 years.
Yeah, I see you mentioned that a lot.
And it really helps with whatever you're cooking. If you're going to use a little mesquite, let's throw a little apple or throw a little peach in there. If you're cooking fish, let's use some alder wood.
Now, how do you source your wood? Do you have to buy it?
I've cut wood all my life. And like my oldest brother Randy said, when you cut it in the summer, it'll warm you twice. Once when you cut it, once when you burn it. I've always took a little pleasure in cutting wood. It's one of them deals to where it's still something that you're able to do, and it's fuel.
Yep. We only heat with wood, and my mom cooked on a wood stove till I was 17. So I grew up, my whole youth was cutting stove wood, which had to be smaller than firewood,
Yeah. I have a sponsor now, Smoky Woods Company. They send me wood, that's kiln dried, and they're good folks. But I still, every 2 weeks, I'll go pick up a load of mesquite, just so I don't forget how. Because if I ever look out there under the barn and there ain't a pile of wood,
makes you nervous, huh?
I get to thinking, something could happen. And I've been places to where I had buy wood, and Shannon will tell you, it just nearly breaks my heart.
Oh, yeah. Little bundle for $4.
Yeah. And I'm thinking, whew, all the money I could have made cutting firewood instead of being a cook.
Is there anything that you would like to tell the world that I haven't asked you?
I'd like to tell them God bless you.
Okay.
Keep doing what you're doing. You make a difference in somebody's life. If you ever need help cooking, pull us up on YouTube.
Oh, hey, I need to mention your website. All of that for free?
Yeah.
Did Shannon put all that together?
Shannon, she's so gifted, not only as a photographer, but as a writer too, because all 3 cookbooks that we got out are all ours. People in the cookbook world, they might hire somebody to take pictures. They might hire somebody to be a food stylist. They might hire a ghost writer. Everything in that cookbook I wrote, she would edit. Then I would rewrite. Then I would rewrite again and rewrite again.
But it is your stuff.
It is mine and Shan's words and pictures throughout in all of them.
Nice.
When she puts together a website and she updates it all the time, and it's just KentRollins.com, there's so much more to our life than just filming. Social media consumes so much of what we do anymore. We're very blessed. We have some great help, that helps us out with stuff. If ever I have a question of anything computer-based, I don't call Google, I call Shannon.
Right. I'm pretty new to cooking, smoking and stuff. And I tell you what, the recipes that you have on that website for free, it just blows my mind that it doesn't matter what you want to cook, you've got a method.
We try to have it on there, and that's something, every YouTube video has a recipe. If it's food involved, that recipe's on the website.
Right. And then you allow people to print it for free.
Yeah. And some of those recipes that aren't there are in 3 cookbooks. The first book that we put out, A Taste of Cowboy, was voted on Amazon by Amazon as being one of the top 100 books to own in a lifetime.
I know. Do you have some here?
Yeah.
I planned on buying one and getting it signed while I was here.
2 of the books still Amazon bestseller. We've been blessed. I enjoy what we do. Somebody asked me, you're nearly 67 years old. How long are you going to cook? I said, I'm going to cook for my own funeral. It's better than life insurance. They said, how you figure that? I said, well, I'm going to cater a big meal before I die. Shannon ain't going to charge them nothing to get in, but you can charge them $500 a plate to get out. So it'll be good.
All right. Well, Kent, you have been a dynamic guest, and I'm not surprised. I expected nothing less. I know how busy you are, but thank you so very much for taking your time.
Thank you, Chris. And if my dad was here, he would say, thank you so much for continuing a legacy that so many old people started long before we ever come along. And that's the art of being a farrier and a blacksmith.
Well, thank you. There's a shared brotherhood in bending iron on an anvil, and probably a shared brotherhood of cooking meat over a grill type thing.
After he died, I wrote a poem that he never heard it in person. I know he's heard me say it many times since then up in heaven.
Can you recite it?
He is covered all with sweat as I tied my old horse there in the shade. He said, an old horse that'll stand for more than 5 minutes. He said, there ain't never been one made. He wore an old ragged pair of leggings that'd been cut off just below the knees. His old hands were hard and calloused, and his arms hung off a limb like 2 giant oak trees. He said, you reckon you could hold this old feller? He seems to have a lot of trouble standing still. Why, you'd think after 45 years of this I'd quit, had enough, and got my fill. Well, he let that old horse's leg down and he went to his anvil to shape a shoe. He said sometimes in life we got to have a little adjusting to keep us all straight and true. He said trimming and shoeing these old horses, he said it's just like dealing with life. Nobody said it was going to be easy, but if you'll do it with pride and honor, you can get through all the times of trouble and strife. Well, he nailed that shoe on pretty quick. He never missed his aim. He said sometimes in life you've really got to struggle if there's going to be any kind of gain. By now his old shirt was salted down, soaked by the summer sun. It didn't take him long trimming, and my old horse was done. I thanked him for his story, and I paid him for his time. And as I was riding away, I could hear his old anvil ringing, making a perfect chime. Now, there ain't a day that went by that I didn't think of him and his advice, and I'd usually stop and see him every week, sometimes more than twice. But now the old horses, they ain't lined up no more. His old anvil sits there silent, and his leggings lay empty in the floor. Yeah, the good Lord needed a farrier. And it makes me sort of sad. But he sure got the best of me when he hired my dad.
Wow.
Thank you, sir. That is on our YouTube channel. It's called Horseshoes in Heaven. But also it's in, I think, the first cookbook, too.
You know, I'm going to quit asking my guests for a dad joke and say, give me a poem. That was unbelievable. Man, beautiful.
He was a very stout man. He never said, I love you, but you knew he did. You know, my mother was the one that said it, and I was raised around it to where I'm a very affectionate person. You know, Shannon tells me, she said, you should have been a Walmart greeter. You greet everybody. And I said, well, I'll try. I look back at what they both taught me in life. Both of them been gone a long time now. I never go through a day that I don't think about them or a lesson that they taught me. It could do with horses or cattle or cooking or just life. I seen a big man that was 6'6", weighed 240, go through cancer, and chemo really killed him. When he passed away, he was about 110 pounds.
Oh, my goodness.
I guarantee you there is a lot of shod horses in heaven now.
Yeah. Wow. Well, Kent, thanks again, my friend.
Yes, sir, my friend.
I don't even care if you want to cook. Check out Kent Rollins on Facebook and KentRollins.com. You will be inspired. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, my friend.
I have taken up the filming and editing of the reality show that is our students' lives while in the Heartland. We call it Down and Dirty Heartlander's Journey. It has been my family's singular honor for almost 3 decades to watch people develop, improve their lives, and change while they become Heartlanders. And now I am using YouTube to share that journey with you. Check out Heartland Horseshoeing School on YouTube, or you can find it through our website at www.heartlandhorseshoeing.com. Please subscribe, like, and share. I thank you.